After 58 years of operation, on January 6, 2026, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting officially ceased operations in the United States. The CPB served as a fundamental piece for public broadcasting in the United States. This was specifically true for PBS and NPR, and in today's video, we'll be going over how we got here, along with a little bit of history of the CPB.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.
Just as a little personal FYI, before we begin the rest of the video, I am playing Ghost of Yotei right now. I typically do gaming stuff on the channel, so if you're interested in checking out that content, we're going after the Saito brothers right now. Be sure to check that out. But anyway, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was started in 1967 as a part of the Public Broadcasting Act of, want to guess what year? No? Yes? 6-7, that's right. 1967. I leave 6-7 and 25. I know it's okay. Which was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. This was during one of the most pivotal decades in the 20th century in the United States, as news coverage over television was starting to grow, joining the already popular radio coverage. During this time, though, PBS and NPR weren't actually around yet. PBS at the time was referred to as NET, or National Educational Television, and NPR wouldn't come around until 1970. The name change from NET to PBS happened due to the CPB not wanting to be affiliated with any bias accusations Republicans had on NET. At that point in time, NET had a reputation for typically being left-leaning, if you will, so the CPB created their own thing. The funding would be appropriated by Congress, plus the additional interest from those funds. Those funds would then go to countless amounts of markets that had NET at the time, which would then become PBS and NPR. For PBS, most stations will produce certain programming and broadcast it with the rest of the affiliates. The most prominent stations being WGBH, or it's just GBH now, in Boston, WNET in New York, and WETA in Washington, D.C., the U.S. nation's capital. This also includes PBS sharing overseas programming from the British Broadcasting Channel. I'm not going to say the acronym. You need to grow up. Grow up, man. To add with nationally funded shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, This Old House, and Austin City Limits. Local stations would also be able to make local-based programming for their respected market. For example, KLRN in San Antonio could make a documentary series about Hemisphere and why it was lucrative for them, and also get nationally funded shows to air in their market for the San Antonio region, such as Arthur, PBS NewsHour, and Nova, and also offer the opportunity, to share the Hemisphere documentary with other affiliates. NPR pretty much works the same way. Get funding from Congress and the CPB to distribute national programming over the radio, and also make local stuff for your respective market. Believe it or not, the thought of educational television seemed pretty silly to most companies until the concept eventually took off, which makes sense since, as of currently, no media conglomerate owns either. This concept was especially helpful for stay-at-home moms, kids, teachers, DIY folks, and young adults, as YouTube, obviously, was not around yet. The CPB funding them also made sure that the stations would not contain advertising. This is why the Fred Rogers speech to the Senate in 1969 to not undercut public television funding, and LeVar Burton's speech to Congress in 1995 to keep the funding up for public television served as key moments for keeping the funding to the CPB so they could benefit PBS and NPR stations across the U.S.
This is PBS.
Turning the clock to the present day, the CPB's downfall was caused ultimately by the Trump administration, especially this time around for his second term. Trump has gone at them plenty of times, but recently it was because of the coverage of the 2020 presidential election in which he lost to former President Joe Biden. He remained very immersed, yes, even after he won in 2024, on teaching, quote, woke media, end quote, a lesson. He would attack news sources like CNN, which is supposed to be the opposite of Republican ideas. I I mean, come on. But anyway, CBS, ABC, and NBC. And unfortunately, PBS and NPR served as a part of his, quote, woke media, end quote, umbrella, filing agendas against him and his ideas, and he took advantage of that in 2025. This is the part of the video where I will mention that elections have consequences, and I say that saying all the time, but it's so true, man. Now, can the government completely be trusted? Nah, not even. But anytime we have an election or any sort of election comes around, whether it's presidential or it's for a House of Representatives spot or a Senate spot, they all matter, as one person could make a difference in any given vote or choice in Congress. For the 2024 election, Donald Trump would go on to sweep most of the United States and would get complete power over nearly any choice he wanted, with the GOP majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives. He'll have that majority power until the end of the year, which is 2026, which will highly depend on how midterms will go for Senate spots and House of Representatives spots. Like I just mentioned, make sure that you're registered to vote. One of the obvious things he enthralled his campaign on was ICE and immigration, which unfortunately we're currently seeing that. Hashtag elections have consequences. The other was DEI, quote, that, and then CPB, or the CPB, I can't even talk, would be the other. It was pretty much the likes of a PBS and NPR are biased. Maybe I should take away their funds. Maybe, you know what? Do that same sentence I just did. We're going to do it in his voice. The silly woke media. We're going to take away the votes. We're going to take away the money. PBS, NPR, so woke. That's so woke. It's woke. I'm tired of it. We're going to take away the money. We're going to put it towards Greenland. We're going to put it towards ICE. No more woke media. No more. Get them out of here. Get those sons of out of here. I don't know. I can't do his voice. I'm not Seth Meyers. I can't do his voice. Quick flashback time. Ironically, this wasn't the first time the CPB would go through accusations of bias or being potentially defunded or shut down. There will be a Wikipedia link in the comments section if you want to see more about those kinds of incidents. In the 2004-2005 calendar year, people from PBS and NPR would call out the CPB for being aligned with a conservative agenda just a bit too much, in which the CPB would reply with the fact that they were seeking balance. It was just during the Bush administration, first to second, so you do what you want with that. During the early 1970s as well, fresh off of formation, former President Richard Nixon infamously disliked PBS and NPR because of their coverage on his administration, which would age funnily because of the Watergate scandal, in which PBS and NPR covered by making sure people got the info that they needed about the ugliness of the Nixon administration and all of the dirty work that would be done behind closed doors. The other broadcast networks at that time, which were ABC, CBS, and NBC, Fox wouldn't come around until the 80s, they all covered Nixon's administration as well, but they were fearful of advertising and broadcast licenses being taken at the time and wasn't as heavy on the coverage. In 2011, Wisconsin's Paul Ryan had a Path to Prosperity budget that would have completely cut the CPB. However, it passed in the House of Representatives, but it would go on to fail in the Senate. As for Donald Trump, he's tried 3 different times to eliminate the CPB: 2017, 2019, and most recently in 2021. All would fail until 2025 would come around. Alright, now that flashback is over, we can come back into modern times. The process for essentially eliminating the CPB began in May of 2025 as Donald Trump would issue an executive order targeting CPB funding. On July 17, 2025, the United States Senate would go on to vote on a $9 billion recession package for funds, and the CPB's funding ended up in that package. Pause? Not really? Nah, that's not a pause. You just need to grow up. That's not a pause. We had 2 pauses in this video, pretty much. That's insane, man. There's also included a large reduction on foreign aid to U.S. allies. The recession package looked to cut $1.1 billion that would have been allocated to the CPB. With only 2 Republicans joining Democrats to keep the funding going, the recession package passed in the Senate, 51-48. This ultimately resulted in where we are today, as the CPB would have to cease operations at the start of the new year for 2026.
PBS Kids.
The future of PBS and NPR has been a concern to most people, as it should be. Some places and sources have said that PBS and NPR will be gone, which is not true, at least as of the time being. As of the script that I wrote, January 9th, 2026, the only area in the United States that will be losing or dropping their PBS affiliation will be Arkansas PBS, which is set to take place Wednesday, July 1st, 2026. There may be others that have been added since. I'm not sure, but you can look that up yourself if there are others. According to the Pew Research Center, a nonpartisan website, partisan. Roughly 51% of Americans still trust PBS for the news that they receive. NPR on that same poll was at 37%, which is likely lower due to NPR mainly concentrating on radio and news articles compared to PBS, which still has their TV stations along with a lot of other resources. There will be a link to that poll in the comment section if you want to see where the other companies are on that list. So what happens now? Well, let's start with NPR. NPR should benefit a lot from having their website and also their YouTube channel. Radio will still help, but it won't be as much. Honestly, I think NPR may fade a lot quicker in regards to their radio stations, especially in smaller populated areas due to funds eventually running out, or personal political persuasion. That is a hell of a tongue twister by MAGA and company to dump NPR radio stations in deep red states and poorly populated areas. The digital footprint for NPR is going to be really important moving forward, and it should help them out in a major way because that's what they rely on anyway. Also, the people that do the Tiny Desk concerts, the ones with Nelly Furtado, I think Ryan Leslie did one, I think Juvenile did one too, that's NPR. So just wanted to point that out. Shout out to NPR. All that good stuff, man. As for PBS, they'll still have their traditional TV stations across the United States and the territories, which include Alaska and Hawaii. PBS also has their own YouTube channel as well, along with their app and website. PBS in this situation also has a double whammy because they have to manage PBS Kids and its programming, along with the Create channel, which is the alternative travel/cooking channel for PBS stations. A lot of those Create sub channels are probably going to start getting clapped too. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in certain markets because of, obviously funding running low. Just like for NPR, I wouldn't be surprised to see stations, that's a tongue twister. I wouldn't be surprised to see stations shutting down early in deep red states because of MAGA persuasion or funds running low. PBS remains the only broadcast TV network with a kid-focused programming slot most days of the week. PBS Kids should be able to help out. However, my biggest concern is that over time, eventually those funds will also run short for that department as well. It'll be a harder burden to have because of how many stations they'll have to manage, which isn't even including the other spectrum of things for PBS, which is their big produced shows or highly produced shows like Nova from WGBH or even Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood from WQED. This burden will also extend to local-based programming for individual markets in, smaller markets especially, you're going to feel it. Stations that may not earn as much moolah compared to those larger stations will see the burden just as quickly, or if not faster, than the major stations. Ironically enough, WETA's PBS NewsHour announced that recently the PBS NewsHour Weekend Edition would be ending on Sunday, January 11th. It's January the 12th as of this recording, so that's already done with. PBS will face a footprint in the TV world that will move backwards, pretty much like it was in the days of NET. As time goes on, some markets may have a PBS station and others may not. Larger markets and popular stations probably won't see the hit as quickly as the smaller markets. Eventually, once the Trump administration is gone, something similar to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting will be back at the federal level. Until then, alternatives for funding for PBS and NPR will be coming from foundations, public and private donations, and sponsorships. In this situation, I will say that I wouldn't be very shocked if somebody like Netflix continued to buy certain licenses for the time being for certain PBS programming to fund it, like Nova. Netflix recently did this with Sesame Street, as they have the right to air new episodes and keep the show going, as it's one of the longest shows that's still going on the air. I know The Simpsons is another, SpongeBob is up there, Arthur was one until a few years back, but yeah, Sesame Street will be able to continue because of Netflix funding it. So other people, maybe Disney might try to fund Nova, etc., etc. You kind of see where I'm going, you know, media conglomerate. Hey, you're having trouble with your programming, let me have it for a little bit. It's on a streaming platform, they get to fund it, they get to create new episodes, etc., etc. Another thing I wouldn't be too shocked to see is certain states making bill proposals to add individual layers of protection to PBS and NPR affiliates, like maybe in California, Colorado, New Mexico, basically coming up with bill proposals maybe to fund their local PBS affiliate if they care enough to do it. That's something I think that will probably happen in certain states after a certain amount of time. People are going to get a little concerned, and you'll start seeing that probably more so across Democratic states across the US. Regardless, this is all such a travesty. PBS has defined many generations going back to the 1970s all the way to present day 2026. From Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood to Reading Rainbow, Arthur, Austin City Limits, Carmen San Diego, Painting with Bob Ross, and many, many more countless programs. PBS has served as a fundamental part of many Americans' lives from their childhood all the way to their adulthood, which is insane to think about the fact that most of everybody's either grandparents or parents, more than likely parents, grew up on PBS, just like we would eventually do. We're truly entering a dark time in American history, as we're on the timeline of media being told constantly by the current Trump administration, you're either with me or you're an enemy, which none of it is shocking. Trump is trying his best to turn the media into an echo chamber, but nothing lasts forever, and eventually the hell that we're in will end. Until then, that rhyme, everyone will feel the saying that I always say during times like this, especially with the whole ICE thing going on right now, with everything that happened in Minnesota. There's a thing I always say, 3 words, elections have consequences. If you would like to know more about where you can donate to PBS or NPR, or donate directly to a local station, links will be down in the comment section. Thank you all for watching. See y'all in the next one. Peace. Ah! Yeah. Ah! Sit down! That's what I do!
I gotta pop my dick.
Come on!
Man.
Who else wants some?
Funding for this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.
This is PBS.